So when I look at social media today and all of the angry and hateful type of posts that sometimes go out there and all the negative type of reactions I see, I've been wondering, does social media contribute to depression? Well, let's cover that right now. How often do you see a person criticize someone else? Well, let's go back 20 years before social media even existed. I didn't see that very often. I mean, yeah, you had your maybe like your news commentaries where this was happening and you'd see criticism, but there was a decorum of respect that happened between most people, and people were hesitant to publicly criticize one another, or even privately for that matter. I mean, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but it wasn't commonplace in public eye. Well, fast forward to today, and you see it at least once a day, probably more. I know I do. You know, one of the most recent examples that really caught my attention for this topic today was the Peloton. First of all, let's fix this. It's Peloton. Peloton. Exercise bike commercial. If you haven't seen it, go look for that and you'll know what I'm talking about. In the commercial, basically, there's a husband who buys his wife a really nice and expensive exercise bike. And she's excited about it. She's not sure about this. She gets started with it, and it's kind of tough to get herself started, but over time she really gets into it. And at the end, she has a video where she's showing how it's changed her life, and she's saying thank you to her husband. And the one point I want to make here is she looks great physically. She, from beginning to end, there's nothing wrong with her from what you can see on the outside. Well, immediately people went bonkers for this commercial. And I don't necessarily mean in the positive way. They had negative reactions. How could he give her this? She didn't need it. Or they called it sexist. Why would he buy her, making the equivalent of you're buying your wife a cooking utensil for Christmas? And so you saw all of these negative comments, and as a result, the company lost nearly $1 billion in stock value because of all this negative criticism on social media. You know, Twitter just went crazy with this. Here's another point I want to make with this. What if it was an overweight woman who got it and then suddenly got skinny? Or even then, just if he had given this to an overweight wife, what would have been the reaction then? It would have been criticism. It would have been being picked on for doing something that was, fat shaming. It's incredible the negative responses you immediately see instead of what I saw, which was something that her husband thought was going to be a great thing for her. For all we know, she may have wanted it. And in the end, she found a way to take this and improve her life, make progress, and get better at something. And in the end, a year later, she found herself in a much better place as a result of this gift that she got from her husband, who then she says and gives her gratitude for giving her this gift. So I'm curious. With this example in mind, I want to take this and go, since gratitude and hopefulness are the antithesis of depression, is there a correlation between social media and depression? Well, what I did is I did a little looking around, and I found a study published in the Journal of Social and Clinical Psychology. It was by Melissa G. Hunt of the University of Pennsylvania, and it was done in 2018. And in this study, they compared groups of individuals in one group who used social media on a regular basis, and it could be for a few hours a day or whatever, just normal usage. And then in another study group, they limited them to 10 minutes per platform per day, and 3 platforms were what you were allowed to use: Facebook and Snapchat and Instagram. maximum of 30 minutes per day. That was what the limit was. So the question here was, is there a correlation between social media and depression in this study? And in the results, they came back and they said, as hypothesized, experimentally limiting social media usage on a mobile phone to 10 minutes per platform per day for a full 3 weeks had a significant impact on well-being. Both loneliness and depressive symptoms declined in the experimental group. With respect to depression, the intervention was most impactful for those who started the study with higher levels of depression. And then you go further into the study at the end, and they comment in the conclusion, it is ironic, but perhaps not surprising, that reducing social media, which promised to help connect with others, actually helps people feel less lonely and depressed. I hypothesize that since criticism, angry rants, anger, and hateful comments, especially out on social media, are indicators of depression, and depression goes down when social media usage is reduced, I suggest that social media is a heavy contributor to our social depression that our society is facing. I honestly think that social media is a heavy contributor to much of the negative that we see in our society today. And I truly think that a reduction in social media usage will actually bring an improvement in the mental health of society. What do you think about my hypothesis? Do you agree that perhaps social media is causing us to have serious depressive thoughts and it's contributing to the downfall of our society? What do you think? Share your thoughts in the chat below. And then if you like this episode, click like and let me know what you think. And then also make sure you subscribe, because I'm still putting out content every week and I want to make sure to connect with you and that you're seeing the content as I'm putting it out there. And hey, I've also got other episodes. Make sure you go out there. If you haven't watched some of the episodes out there, make sure you go follow up and take a look at those as well. Anyway, thank you so much for coming back and watching another episode, and I will see you next week.